Hi, unconventional conventionists. Thanks for tuning in to Time Warp Radio, the Rocky Horror Picture Show Movie by Minute podcast, where with each 7 minutes, we can make you a fair I'm Haley Mervini.
And I'm Katie Dominy.
And we are discussing timestamps minute 48:04 to minute 56:13. And we're covering what is by far the most controversial segment of this movie, yes, which includes Brad and Janet's separate necks and separate bedroom scenes that aren't very different, actually, as far as both text and subtext and context goes. And also Rocky having a really good idea of the layout of Frankenstein Place, considering he's never left the laboratory. With all that said, we wanted to give a content trigger warning today. It is a scene that's offhandedly black comedy and played for laughs, but it's massively uncomfortable, if you can't tell by my voice, to watch, participate in, to read out loud. The dialogue is super uncomfortable. And it's dealing with subject matter that can be unsettling for some, so enter at your own risk. I also wanted to footnote that it's a signifier of the age of this film and of the era it was being produced during, when, sexual assault was used as a punishment or as a humorous plot device. And thankfully, modern audiences no longer find these situations funny. We have a better understanding as a species to being aware of the immense pain of this subject matter. So we're going to try to make it less, I don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to get through it. We're going to get through this segment.
Stick with us, guys. Stick with us.
We're going to get through it. The film resumes with a zigzag center split wipe transition back into the interior study of the criminologist's office. Mm-hmm. He raises his eyebrows. He's like kind of in a little bit of shock at the events that have transpired so far. This in the stage show would be opening Act 2.
Yes.
Which I like because considering Brad and Janet have just seen Eddie get murdered, I like that the audience and Brad and Janet have approximately 15 minutes to forget what just happened, and come into these bedroom scenes and still be charmed by Frankenfurter. There's also the Denton affair open behind the criminologist, mm-hmm, with a full page. It looks like it is like a really fuzzy, blurry comic panel, like a full page comic panel.
Yeah, we were thinking it might be the Charles Atlas ad, but every Charles Atlas comic book ad we could find had like a full body photograph of him in it, and this one didn't seem to have that photo in it. Mm-hmm. It could be a cropped version of one of those comics, or we were thinking it might be a comic page from the comic that's on the opposing side of the book, mm-hmm, which mm-hmm, is Weird Fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to thank Sean Hall Designs, mm-hmm, because his remastering and retouching he's done on these photos, so
Incredible.
We can be able to see like the ticker tape captions and
yes,
stuff, is great. He too doesn't know what this is. So I would love to talk to him and be like, let's figure this out together. Let's find out what is in this Denton affair. But yeah, it could be from the comic that's on the other side of the page, which is a Weird Fantasy comic, issue number 13B, fully illustrated front page that's been written and inked by Al Feldstein, who became the editor of Mad Magazine. And for just $1, this comic boasts incredible science fiction stories with a rocket ship and astronauts on some kind of like rocky, craggy surface, like maybe a moon, maybe, with this gigantic, strange orange sun with like webbing on it.
Yeah, it's either a sun or maybe it's another planet, but it's really big in the sky in the background.
And this comic was originally published in May-June of 1952 and included the stories Home to Stay, where an astronaut is hurled earthbound by the gravitational pull and says a line, "It's getting warmer. I'm entering the atmosphere." Which just like, obviously all of these comics were just like smut at the time, just like people loosely.
They're referencing sex with a very thin veil.
Yes. Yes, exactly. It's like the romance novels before they overtly just started talking about what they were doing in the romance novels. Other stories were The Trip, where men excitedly watched a rocket ship get boarded with supplies.
Again, very, very thinly veiled sex reference.
Yeah, and the images of these rocket ships are phallic.
Very phallic.
It's all about new discoveries and like trying new things. But then there was another story included in this comic titled The End, where, I quote, "Children became the only hope of humanity. For the first time in Earth's sad history, children became so valued that nowhere was a child hungry or cold or ill-treated." One of the characters says, "Perhaps the sterility will only affect our generation. Perhaps the children will be able to reproduce when they grow up." I'm intrigued.
Same.
Because part of our, like, what is Frank doing here? Why is he seducing Brad and Janet? Why is he planting a seed in Janet?
Yeah.
Like, maybe...
Are there fertility issues in transsexual?
And that the sex morality standard in that galaxy has evolved to a place where, like, sex is not used for procreation at all anymore.
Yeah.
To the point where their biology and their anatomy has evolved to be sterile. And how interesting if, like, really all Frank needs to do is impregnate one girl, and then the Transylvanians can leave and then come back in 10 years and see if it stuck.
Yep.
And then be like, cool, that's part Transylvanian. Let's see if
it can reproduce.
Right.
Yes.
Very interesting. And then, you know, back to the vaguely nuanced sexual material, a story called Don't Count Your Chickens, where a boy named Teddy finds a pulsating, shimmering thing from outer space that's basically like a prehistoric Audrey 2 that says, "What I am does not matter. Now you must help me. I am hungry. I must have meat to feed upon."
I like your comic book voice.
It's got all those like squiggly letters, so you gotta like affect it, you know. Which is also interesting because if Frank needs the species, the human species, to continue the Transylvanian lineage, the bloodline, where is the morality when you're also cannibalizing these people?
Yeah.
And do Transylvanians need human meat to survive? Like, is that one of their key food groups? I don't know. And it makes me wonder because how many people have the Transylvanians cannibalized?
Yes.
Out at their weird sex dungeon in the middle of
Eddie was
Ohio.
just the latest.
Yeah. The Denton Affair is open on the back of a golden eagle of types, maybe. A bronzed eagle. It could be a taxidermied bird that Krim had bronzed.
So I'm thinking that Krim is either a Transylvanian because they're weirdly obsessed with birds, or he's just super patriotic.
It's one or the other. It's either extreme. But Krim also has some like document or loose leaf dossier page in front of him that he's referencing. And the projection screen behind him is still pulled down. The criminologist begins.
There are some people who say that life is an illusion and that reality is simply a figment of our imaginations. If this is so, then Brad and Janet are quite safe.
The belief that life is an illusion is a kind of like Buddhist belief.
Yeah, so Buddhists believe in reincarnation. And since reincarnation is so important to them, and you do kind of just keep going and live your life in different forms, then isn't life just kind of an illusion? It really takes the significance out of what's happening in your current situation.
Yeah, in your present reality.
Yes.
You also found a really great quote from Woody Allen.
I did.
That says, "What if everything is an illusion and nothing exists? In that case, I definitely overpaid for my carpet." And it's true, because it's like, yeah, we can argue about whether or not it's actually occurring, whether or not what the weather outside is what it is, because it comes down to, like, if it matters to a person, then it matters, period.
Yes.
You know, we've evolved our language to, I think, be more empathetic to, again, understanding other people's brain processes and emotional train of thought, that we are less doubtful that life is an illusion because everybody else is experiencing life at the same time
in a different
us.
way.
Right. Yeah. But I think Krim disagrees with all of that, because he kind of like hand gestures on like figment of our imaginations. Like, well, if that's how some people are going to look at it, fine. Like, I'm not going to try to change these people's minds, because if everything is imagined, if this is all a dream, if the sequence of events that we're about to see is not real, and that Brad and Janet make the entire thing up and lie in their sworn statements, they wouldn't be traumatized at the end of the movie, which we see them. We see them crawling around on the floor and saying in Superheroes that they don't know where
to go from here.
Yeah, what am I supposed to do? We literally don't know how we got here.
Yeah.
And also, that escalated so quickly, and I don't even remember saying no or yes or anything. And what was that guy's name again, even? Because it's like they're definitely affected by it. Krim says, however, the sudden departure of their host and his creation into the seclusion of his somber bridal suite had left them feeling both apprehensive and uneasy, a feeling which grew as the other guests departed and they were shown to their separate rooms. And Krim's warning us that this is pretty real. Like, the emotions that Brad and Janet are feeling are valid, and they don't know anybody of this party, and half of them just left. So, like, we're not having a group sleepover, guys. It's not one of those things where everyone's having brunch tomorrow. We're just keeping Brad and Janet overnight for observation. Well, okay, we don't know how they get separated from where we see Frank and Rocky go into their bridal suite. I don't know. Do you think they see what rooms they go into? Do you think Brad sees where Janet gets dropped off and then Brad gets taken to the next room?
I think so, because Columbia tosses both of them their robes. So I think it's like, we're walking together. Okay, Janet, you go in here. And then, okay, Brad, you go in here.
Okay. Because I always think, like, why didn't they insist to stay together and, like, Brad do the gentlemanly thing and sleep on the floor if he didn't want to disrespect Janet and share the bed with her?
Because it's not godly to share a room if you're not wed.
Remember on like I Love Lucy where they had to show Ricky and Lucy sleeping in separate twin beds? Mm-hmm. Wow, how media has evolved. Krim is like, when he's saying this portion of his monologue, he's slowly leaning in, like he's telling us a secret. He's letting us in on some insider information. And I always forget that he is referencing a document that is hardbound, which means he could be revisiting these events all the time. If he wants, he could be going through this affair and still be trying to figure out, like if he is a police detective, if the criminologist is the lead police detective in Denton and is still trying to figure out this case, Krim already knows the events that are about to happen. So he's like kind of warning us too. He's also kind of giving us a trigger warning of like, what you're about to see is kind of fun, but
it's also kind of terrifying.
Yeah, this is definitely the most horrific part of the movie, I would say. It's more horrific than Eddie getting murdered.
Yeah.
And Frank and Rocky's murder is like so campy, especially in comparison, that like these scenes feel so heavy that I genuinely think people forget that they exist. You have a blank spot in your mind between Hot Patootie and Toucha Toucha that you're like, oh yeah, there's other scenes that happen in that time frame.
In fact, we kept wanting to jump into Toucha while we were doing our research for this episode.
Because it's like,
it's very uncomfortable.
And nobody ever talks about it, considering it's a movie that gets played weekly for the last 45 years. We'll get into it. We're still just talking about Krim. He's just warning us about what we're about to see. Is he also warning us that life is not an illusion? You know, is he contradicting his previous statement of like, I know I just suggested that this could all be false narrative, or the things you do to other people are very important, and if you have a bad feeling about things, maybe stick together.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why didn't Frank propose like a threesome with Brad and Janet? You know what I mean? Like, why didn't he send them both into a room together and be like, cool, have fun, get to know each other a little bit, and I'll be in there later, and it'll be a great time? Did he need them to be separate for an experiment? Was he only planning on seducing one of them? Like...
Yeah, what was the purpose of separating them?
Does he have a thing for virgins? Did he not want them to deflower each other and then was like, I want to seduce them both first? Katie is making the ickiest face right now.
It's icky.
We've been making icky faces all week.
Icky. We
wipe from Krim's study to Janet's room, which has a red filter on it. She suddenly gets pushed in. It's very quick. She's all of a sudden in there. Columbia throws her a robe, and she's so caught off guard by being just in like another surrounding now. She stumbles backward into like a bird bath.
Yeah, it's like either a bird bath indoors, which like again, what's their deal with birds? Or
I like that though.
It's like just a bowl of water in the middle of the table. Like it at church, the like
a holy water.
Yeah. You know how you like dunk the baby in and it's just like a little bird bath that you put the baby in? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, you're talking about the strange act of baptism. When you just dunk a child in water.
Put the baby in the bird bath and then you go, boop, holy.
Well, that is a callback that happens because Janet backs into it and they're like, watch out, it's holy water, it burns.
No, I thought, boop, you're holy was the callback. Sorry. I just...
Because she reacts to it, like it sizzles. And Also in this room, like, everything is covered with sheets. There's no chairs for her to sit on. There's no bedside table for her to, like, set her purse down. It is not a room that is designed for guests that are, like, visiting and having an overnight.
It's just a bed, a canopy bed, and, like, lamps.
Yeah, and, like, you're getting pushed in the direction of the bed because there's nowhere else to sit. So even if you just want to sit down, like, now you're sitting in bed, and now you're already in bed, and Brad and Janet are not wearing clothes. Like, they've already been undressed 30 minutes ago and have already become desensitized to
being semi-nude.
Right. They just don't even consider how clothing could be a protection for them.
Yes.
They just think it's going to be a regular sleepover, and or not. Or maybe they're, like, terrified because they've just seen Eddie get murdered.
Yeah. Because they both do look nervous as they enter their rooms.
Apprehensive and uneasy.
Yes.
Yeah. And everything in the room is tinted rose,
Yes.
though, which is either a lighting effect or a camera lens effect, which makes me ask, has Janet been drugged? Or is she, like, because they talk about rose tint my world, is Janet already under the influence of something, and that's why
Everything is
everything's,
rose tinted.
like, hazy and, like, 70s porno, like,
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know. Columbia does not come in with her. Janet realizes this isn't a girls' night. We're not getting to know each other better. And they've again been stripped of their lab coats and given a different cover-up.
A tiny silk robe.
Yeah, we cut back to the laboratory where Magenta and Riff are left and right of the TV monitor, surveilling Janet walking into her room. It's not just them watching. We are getting a front and center framing of this, you know, reminding us we're also implicit to watching these acts.
When they're watching the monitor, Janet does look into the monitor, which makes me think that she either, one, realizes that she's being surveilled, or that the camera is disguised as maybe a picture, like a portrait or something.
What if it's a bird?
Yeah.
What if they put cameras in all of those taxidermy birds?
It could be a possibility, honestly.
And she's just looking, she's trying to look for anything, and she happens to, well, I don't know, because then she reacts and she kind of covers herself up, which then makes me ask, if she does see that it's a camera, if she does think, ooh, I'm indecent, she could throw her robe over the camera so that whoever is on the other side of the two-way mirror doesn't see. Or she could take a sheet off of any of the other furniture that's laying around and cover up the camera if she sees it. You know, I don't know. Maybe Janet is maybe she's, like, really opening her eyes and becoming sexually liberated. And, like, this is just her piece by piece changing her lifestyle, changing her sexual preferences, because then, like, when you get into, like, shock treatment and she's, like, all gung-ho for a reality television life, maybe Janet is okay with being on camera.
Me.
Okay, so we watched Shock Treatment.
Haley finally saw it.
I will save my thoughts, but I'm still seeing them as totally separate works because I don't think Richard O'Brien wrote Rocky Horror intending for there to be a sequel and intending for the story to continue. But it's also very interesting to consider how the events of the evening that we're about to discuss may permanently impact and traumatize these two individuals 6 years later. It's interesting.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk about it later. Riff Raff is pursing his lips, like making like sounds. And Patricia,
It's very uncomfortable.
well, she in the commentary says, I never really liked the way you took so much pleasure in looking at that in a voyeuristic sense. Making those noises and such, I got rather embarrassed. And so do we.
Yeah.
And, but then also at this point in the commentary, Richard reveals that he got to keep this prop from the set and has it in his back shed.
Yeah, the little frame of the TV monitor. He said his kids play with it.
That's so sweet.
That is sweet.
I wonder if he has it actually framing a TV now.
That would be cute.
Because I would. We cut back to Columbia forcefully pushing Brad into his separate chamber, and she tosses him the robe. He kind of looks down at it like, he looks around too. How did I even get into this room? I thought we were just in the ballroom. It's funny because Brad and Janet are having the reactions that us as audience members getting pulled into these different rooms are having. It's disorienting. I have no idea where in the castle these rooms are located, because I thought about it. It's like, is it on the second floor?
Who knows, honestly?
Is it on the same floor as Magenta and Columbia?
Maybe all the bedrooms are kind of grouped together. I have no idea.
Who knows? Brad and Janet do not know. They do not know.
And what's really interesting about this scene as well is I've always thought that it was blue to match Janet's pink, but it's not. It's well lit, in fact. It's kind of gray tinted, but it is white lighting in the room. Yeah,
so like Brad is not under the same influence, under the same infatuation. He is not a muscle fan. You know, if that was Janet's switch of like, ooh, I'm into this now. Okay, I can see how this lifestyle. If Janet didn't get turned off by Frank murdering Eddie, she is now wearing a filtered lens perspective on this person. If she's still thinking like, ooh, it'd be fun to get to know him, it's like, no, you run. Like, as soon as Brad and Janet were left alone, I'm screaming at my TV, go find each other. Like, Brad, leave. Go find the other room that you just saw Janet get walked into.
Please.
And, like, run out of the front door. You just saw a guy get killed. Like, why are you continuing to spend the night? But they're so uncomfortable. They're so out of place. They really don't know.
Both of them are very, very, very uncomfortable.
They don't know how to not be polite in this instance. To which we always quote Karen and Georgia, fuck politeness. Fuck it. Fuck politeness.
You don't feel comfortable staying with somewhere? Leave.
Get out of there. Get out of there. You have that good intuition from years of DNA, millennia of DNA, warning you when, like, there's a predator in the area. And when you get that, like...
tingle?
Yeah, the tingle, the hairs on the back of your neck are apprehensive and uneasy.
Yes.
Probably not a situation you want to be in.
Get out of there.
Yes. But he doesn't. Neither of them leave. They both go into their rooms. And Brad, even though being able to see clearly the situation... still gets into bed.
Yes.
And it's a mirrored scene with mirrored framing, mirrored action. Columbia is doing the same delivery.
Shove and toss.
She does love tossing clothes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me too. And again, once Brad is in the room, we cut again to Magenta and Riff Raff watching the TV monitor.
Still surveilling Janet. We cut to them.
Still watching Janet.
Still watching her. They're not watching both Brad and Janet. We didn't see Brad go into his room and then Riff and Magenta checking to make sure that he is comfortable.
Yeah.
And is enjoying his stay. No.
They're still watching Janet.
They don't care they don't care about Brad. Riff and Magenta have not cared about Brad from the second he walked in, and that's why they've been ignoring him when he's asking for a phone.
Yep.
Because he came with a fertile female, and that's all they care about. Janet takes her robe off very quickly and gets into bed because she's still trying to remain chaste. Magenta is kind of like, And the music right now, that score.
Bring, bring, bring.
It's so good.
Yes.
It is so good because, okay, I love The Shining, no secret about it. they similarly use like a bum, 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 bum. Oh, it gets you feeling so... Now is when the horror movie is beginning.
Yes.
You know? Riff and Magenta are observing and don't stop what's about to happen. It's the same music. It's like their theme.
Yeah. If Riff and Magenta were to have a theme, that would be it.
Yeah, I call it the elbow sex theme.
Yes, absolutely.
After we see them again, we cut back to Janet, and again we have that red rose wash over the entire room. We see Janet in silhouette on the bed with netting, like a canopy around her bed, with dogs howling in the background. Very spooky.
Oh.
She's laying in bed when there's a tap, 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 tap on the door. She sits up and she jumps up because she was not
Expecting it at all.
Well, but she also wasn't asleep.
Yeah.
She was like probably horny and like, you know, wondering where Brad is and wondering what Brad is doing right now. We're in the room with Janet.
Mm-hmm.
We don't continue to watch on a monitor, okay? These shots were so close to the actors
screen.
and to the
Yes.
screen that it's so... it's gold because it's such a perfect, like, everything is obscured, everything is a little uncertain, and...
Well, and I love the way that they shot this through that sheer screen because Richard attributes it to Jim Sharman being a prude, not wanting to show the actors nude, but it's actually how they designed it to work in the stage show. And they did it so that the actors wouldn't have to get nude, and it could be, the trick could be maintained without, like, risky close-ups of flesh, as Richard put it. And nobody's coerced into doing anything overt, which honestly great, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear about this sequence of shots.
Yeah, and it's good to know that they've always made sure that it is a partial reveal. Like, if you were to go see the Rocky Horror Show, all of a sudden 45 minutes in, you're not getting hardcore porn right in front of you.
Yeah.
Like, from this point forward, we're kind of getting a burlesque. I do think there's some element of genuine attraction. Some moments.
Yes.
Whether those are coerced moments, we can get into the semantics of it because
It's
they
important.
Are.
Yes.
It is coerced.
Absolutely.
But because there is like I don't know, it's like it kind of... Okay, Dan said it really well when we talked about him, that there are so many alternative sex acts that are being portrayed that, like, for people who want and are turned on by a scenario, like a sub-dom scenario, like, this kind of fills that bubble.
Yeah.
You know? But we're still not seeing any of their skin.
Yes.
It's still like, you're not going to get to see all of it yet. We're never going to see them nude. Actually.
Yeah.
We're never going to see any of the characters fully naked.
We do get a couple nipples, though.
Yeah. Tasteful. Nell is always tasteful. But, like, even Floor Show, we don't see any of them naked. It's like a tasteful covering up of, like, fishnets up to here. Entire torso is covered. Like, you do see skin, but that's part of the burlesque sexiness of, like, a corset.
Yes.
But we don't get any of that right now.
No, it's all covered. It's just silhouettes.
And Frank is being intentionally sneaky, which makes me question how many motives he has coming into this room.
Yeah.
And, okay, could it be to procreate and continue the Transylvanians line? Or is he just didn't get fulfilled by Rocky and now he's literally going door to door to door to door to door until he's exhausted?
Because if he was really interested in forming a bond, a relationship, a sexual scene with Janet, then he would have come in as himself. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have disguised himself as Brad. Mm-hmm. He wouldn't have tried to be sneaky and elusive. It would have been knock, knock, knock. Hello, Janet.
Yeah.
It's me.
Enchanté again. Yeah. Remember when that turned you on, when I just spoke French briefly and that turned you on? Like, Frank could, that is what's weird about it, is it's like,
it's totally feasible for Frank to seduce Janet as Frank, but instead
it's feasible for him to seduce both of them as himself.
Yes, but instead he chooses to be intentionally sneaky.
Yeah. It's awful.
It's really hard to talk about this subject, but I think it is important to bring up.
Mm-hmm. Whatever character, like hidden character motivation that is, that he needs to disguise his identity to pursue the sex that he wants. Like, talk about gay culture in the 60s and 70s where men literally had to disguise themselves, sometimes as women, so they could go to public places with other men.
Yeah.
Like, what does that say about Frank's past, where he informs the decision, I need to take on a disguise because these people won't accept me authentically?
But reminder here, Frank is the villain.
Yes.
Just want to continue to reinforce that theme throughout this podcast. That Frank is not the good guy. He's not the hero. It even says in the opening credits, Brad is the hero. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Frank is not the hero. So please take everything he does into consideration.
Well, okay, and then to talk about Jim
O'Kane.
Yeah, he said, we sometimes question Frank's motivations from a human perspective, and we shouldn't at all, because he is an alien, and we know he's alien, and we know that ultimately any motivation could seem illogical to us. Like, this scene carries so much cognitive dissonance that it's like, why are we even watching this right now?
Yeah.
But, like, human logic does not apply to Frank. He's just observing humans, and maybe that's a statement on what Frank has observed of humans, that they need to disguise themselves to feel comfortable communicating what kind of sex they want. I don't know. Gets dicey. I don't want to justify any of Frank's actions. As Janet, jumps up, she very breathlessly says, "Who is it? Who's there?" Like, if it is Brad, which she thinks it is, like, if Brad had gone into her room and tried to just bone her, she probably would have let him come over and, they probably could have hooked up.
Well, not only if it's Brad, but also if it was anybody else and they said, yeah, it's Frank. She doesn't know any of their names.
No.
She's heard all of their names a total of, once, and then Frank's 0 times.
She still doesn't know Frank's name.
So even if anybody else had said, hey, it's so-and-so, she wouldn't have had any idea who any of the rest of them were.
She's hoping it's Brad.
Yeah.
She's hoping it's Brad. And it's also because she's been laying there scared and just wants, company. Is that so wrong for her to want to, cuddle with her boyfriend after having a really hard day and having to walk through the rain and catch pneumonia? Yeah, that's okay. Yes, they don't even need to hook up. Let Brad and Janet stay in the same room so they can at least just, I don't know, keep each other company in this strange place.
Well, isolation is a cult tactic for brainwashing. Sleep deprivation, isolation, controlment of food. It's all brainwashing stuff that cults use. Oh my
gosh. Well, that's all of the events of the movie. Mm-hmm. Because this happens roughly from, 7 p.m. until 5 a.m. the next day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're keeping them up all night. And
the only food they get is a human body.
They get served reheated meatloaf. But she also is checking to make sure she doesn't let someone else in who she's uncomfortable with. Mm-hmm. She's not just like, knock, knock, come in, having a party. Sure, anyone that's out there. But next she hears Brad's voice saying,
"It's only me, Janet."
She visibly relaxes. She says, "Oh, Brad, come in, darling. Like, thank goodness, the one person I know.
Yeah.
Thank goodness it wasn't any of the other people that are at the door." A silhouette with short hair and glasses enters and crosses immediately onto the bed, gets behind the net curtain, and for all of the times that I've seen this movie, every time I'm kind of looking at it and questioning,
could it be Barry?
Yeah, could they have gotten, I mean, like, if it was, like, it's believable. The way that the camera,
yeah,
the coloring on the camera lens, how shadowy the figure appears.
Because really, unless you're an obsessive like Haley and myself, you don't know what their profiles look like. You don't know what the profile of their face looks like. So honestly, could be anybody.
Yeah, and because Janet is laying in bed, you don't really see how, like, a height difference between, like, Tim and Barry. You kind of just see, like, a long, tall guy. And Tim is a great actor. So he's got a good impression down of the, like, touching the glasses and, like, nodding his head like he's a concerned Brad. It's a faster pursuit of Janet than we've ever seen Brad at any point in the movie. When, like, earlier when they kissed, the one time, we've only seen them peck kiss at
Once.
The church.
Yes.
Which maybe Brad and Janet don't even kiss. Maybe they're the couple that he puts his arm around her because he's respectful and he doesn't want to do anything until he pins his girlfriend or asks her to marry him. Like, he's that respectable of a gentleman that he's like, no, I won't even kiss a girl before we get married.
Because that kiss in the church was pretty uncomfortable.
And, like, I always joke about it, and I have the picture on our Instagram where I'm, like, practically doing, like, a plank. Because it's so strained. They're like, oh, maybe if we only do it for a second, it'll be okay. Just a peck. To see Brad, like, jump into bed with Janet, you're immediately suspicious because you're like, I don't think Brad would do that. That doesn't seem like something Brad would do. Unless, is it? Because he also gets pretty easily seduced by Frank. Like,
who knows?
Yeah.
We've only seen these people at one wedding and then for maybe an hour at this party. So we don't know how Brad acts behind closed doors. Mm-mm. Maybe this is how he is, and maybe he does sneak in through a bedroom window and they snuggle at night or whatever. You know, we don't know how he acts behind closed doors.
That's adorable, though. I like thinking that that he, like, throws a rock to Janet's window and she opens the window and he's like, hey, just wanted to say damn it. Brad begins, kissing her all over the place. She says, oh, Brad, oh, yes, my darling, but what if?
It's all right, Janet. Everything's going to be all right.
And Janet, like, okay, so she is going along with it. Like, if Brad had come in and had tried to seduce her, she's along for the ride because she trusts Brad.
Yeah.
She trusts him when he says it's going to be all right. Emphatically, she trusts him.
Frank's got his impression down. He's been hearing Brad say all night, it's all right, Janet. Janet, it's all right. Janet, I don't know why you're upset. It's all right. Everything's all right.
So this is Frank just, like, subtly taking a dig at Brad.
Oh, absolutely.
Never addressing Janet's emotional concerns. Right. But it's also, like, when they're kissing, you can hear it's Tim. Because he does his giggle at various points in the movie, and he does, he sounds like Nigel Thornberry. So it's obvious that it's him and it's not Barry. And that Barry's voice is just getting cut into that one moment. Janet continues, oh, I hope so, my darling. And in the stage show, she would proceed to turn a light on and be like, oh, because and that's so sweet. If she's wanting to, like, fully experience her first time, she says, oh, I hope so, my darling. Or maybe she really didn't think she was going to hook up.
Yeah.
And she just thought, okay, now we're going to hang out and chit-chat and talk. And we can turn the lights on.
Mm-hmm.
If everything's going to be all right. That got changed to instead a very awkward cuddle, hair petting, wig removal, de-wigging. I just think of, like, if he was, like, scalped. Like, what would you think if, like, you're petting your partner's head and then you just, like, pull their hair off and you're like, how did I just pull off all of their hair in my hand? This is crazy. This is so scary. Frank realizes he's been caught. Janet says, oh, it's.
And she still has no idea what his name is.
We have no idea what his name is. None of us have any idea what the master's name is. And she's terrified because, okay, is Frank a shapeshifter?
Because those vocal impressions, pretty spot on.
Mm-hmm.
So either Frank is a master impersonator.
Uh-huh.
And can even pull off anybody's voice.
Or that's like a Transylvanian thing that they can, like, mimic.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, and he also pulls away from Janet, and she gets a good look at him. So if she just looked in his face, truly believes she just saw Brad, that is a terrifying circumstance if it's like Mystique from X-Men, you know, where it's literally like a different person is now in front of me. And how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
How I just looked at you. It's not Brad. It's not Brad. I thought this was Brad. Ah! And Frank responds,
I'm afraid so, Janet. But isn't it nice?
No.
No, it's really not.
He's a predator. He knows her name and is using it for, like, an overuse of familiarity, like, and to make her
we're
feel
friends. Yeah. I know your name. We're friends.
We're comfortable with each other. We're casual with each other.
Hey, Haley. How's it going, Haley? Are you feeling all right, Haley? Can I get you a drink, Haley?
Not if it's... No, I don't. Thanks. But Frank is continuing to try to shape this narrative and reality and Janet's perspective on the entire situation. This is also subverting a couple of tropes. Mm-hmm. Both bed tricks, which is, my God, who have I done, is the tagline for that trope. Because it's usually when, like, a husband-wife duo, like, one of them suspects the other of cheating, so they do a switcheroo with the person they think they're cheating on them with. And surprise,
it's not that person. It's the person who's trying to catch you.
Yeah, caught you in a lie. It sometimes would be like two women who look similar to each other doing a switcheroo. But nowadays with, like, modern sci-fi horror movies, it's achieved by shape-shifting. So I think there is some level of shape-shiftery occurring. Yeah, because especially if Brad's room is so well lit, I want to give Brad a little bit more credit. And I want to believe that he sees Janet come into the room.
It's still yicky.
Yes, because he says, isn't it nice? And no, because half consent is not a thing. That doesn't exist. And there's another trope, not if they enjoyed it, the rationalization of assault. Where a rapist denies their actions are not assault if the victim orgasms or if they originally protest but then later has fun. No, not real. Mm-mm. No one is ever asking for it. No one is ever gets their mind changed.
No.
Like, that's what you have a conversation about. At this point, if Janet is reacting the way that she is, this is when Frank goes, haha, it's a joke. It's a joke. Isn't it funny that I can shapeshift? Just kidding. I don't want to traumatize you. Is there something I can do to make you feel comfortable right now? Because you seem really uncomfortable right now.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that.
No.
He lies back down on top of her, to which she has to, like, beat his chest to get him off of her. And he's overpowering her. She does not want this. She says, "Oh, you beast, you monster." And pushes him away, sits up. Frank is a rapist.
Yeah.
He's not a beast.
He's not a monster. He's a rapist.
Well, they're true words to call him because it's evil what he's doing to her, because he is a stranger. Like, they do not know each other. He's also a known murderer, possibly a serial murderer.
Yeah.
And Janet asks, "What have you done with Brad?" Because she just saw Eddie get murdered and is probably concerned that Brad also just got murdered and now she's alone, a la Midsommar, and is screwed now.
Yeah.
Because if she can't get out from under Frank, she's
could
doomed.
Be the end, yeah.
She's doomed. Right.
Frank says, "Nothing. Why? Do you think I should?" It feels as if Frank is almost guilting her into playing along. Like, "Oh, if you don't go along with this, then I'll go do something to Brad."
Mm. Yeah, okay, like suggesting, "Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, you think I should go to Brad next? Oh, I hadn't considered that. He wasn't part of the original experiment."
Yeah. Or he had already known, "I'm going to Brad next."
And he's just being a dick.
Yeah.
Because he's right. He hasn't done anything to Brad yet. Nothing. Do you think he's bisexual? Do you think he'd be interested in that sort of thing?
You want to hook us up? You want to tell your fiance that I'm interested?
Yeah. Is there something he needs to try out and experiment with? Because I
can do that.
Provide that for him. And Janet doesn't even, like, at that point, she is actively being traumatized. She says, "You tricked me. I wouldn't have. I've never, ever," and starts crying. She didn't want this. She's a virgin. She feels ruined, taken advantage of, never thought it could happen like this, has never even thought of going so far with Brad. This gets broken up pretty quickly, right? Like, it's like 30 seconds go by, and she finds out that it's Frank.
Yeah.
It didn't look like they appeared past sensual kissing. So Janet is even just traumatized to the fact of, like, I wanted to do this sort of thing with Brad. Like, there's a reason we've been waiting. We're building anticipation. Like, now it's gonna... Is it ruined? Like, Janet doesn't even know. She's just so naive. This just demonstrates the true horror of an assault of this nature.
Yes.
And how quickly and easily it happens, and how hard it is for victims to say no or stand their ground or simply overpower their aggressor and get out of that situation.
The problem is not with the victim, it's with the assailant. The question shouldn't be, how do I avoid rape? It's, don't rape. Just don't do it.
Frank says,
Yes, I know. But it wasn't all bad, was it?
yes, it is all bad.
Yeah.
It's all gaslighting. It's all telling Janet, like, you have this feeling where you don't like this, but I'm going to tell you that what you're feeling is not valid. I'm going to try to rewrite the feelings that you're having, that it's not all bad. He pushes her back down, lies back down on top of her, overpowers her. He says, "I think you found it quite pleasurable." And he continues to just keep making out with her. She still hasn't given any consent. She hasn't said, "Yeah, this is fun. I changed my mind. We can keep going."
In fact, she literally says,
"Oh, stop. I mean, help. Oh, Brad. Oh, Brad." Like, both being, like, turned on at the idea of Brad because the activities that are happening, she's, like, getting turned on, but she doesn't have any control over it. And then is like, "Oh, this would be nice if it were with Brad." And then, "Oh, right. Where is he? Help me." You know, she's crying out for help. And she's actively saying stop, and Frank doesn't even adhere to the, like, most basic safe word of them all.
which is no.
Yeah.
Or stop.
And she sits up, she gets out from under him, he places a finger on her lips and says,
"Shh. Brad's probably asleep by now. Do you want him to see you Like this?
And he pulls her legs up around him, pulling her onto her back. He's like blackmailing her, but it's also like, I'm going to tell Brad that we slept together even if we didn't.
Yeah.
Is what he's threatening. And then he's also threatening, like, you better not protest so loudly, because how embarrassing would it be for him to walk in right now and see you in this position? Janet asks him, like this? Like how? What are we even doing? She's like, what is there to catch us doing? We're not doing anything. Why are you making this so awful? She doesn't, like, she just has no words for it. So she just says, it's your fault. You're to blame. And she doesn't know what he's to blame for, because all of the feelings she's having are so overwhelming.
And so new.
And confusing. She pauses and looks away, and she says, I was saving myself. As if Frank didn't know that she was a virgin. That just illustrates how important sex is to Janet.
Yeah.
That she hasn't relatively done anything at all.
Yeah.
She hasn't even slept with her boyfriend of possibly like 5 or more years.
Yeah.
Like, if not for religious choices, maybe as a method of birth control, because, you know, the IUD didn't exist in 1975.
Condoms were kind of seen as like
a barrier.
It was like taboo.
Like a physical barrier that really only, I think it only became more widespread that people started using condoms in the 90s after the AIDS epidemic.
It was very taboo to even like go out and purchase condoms for a long, long time, because really only like gay men or
at the time what would have been called unsavory people.
Yeah.
Like people who were pursuing sexual relationships casually. Promiscuously.
People.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's totally valid that Brad and Janet are like, no, we're not ready to have kids yet. We're not ready to have kids, and we're not ready really to even get married yet. So maybe we shouldn't have sex at all, because, like, if that happens, what are our options after that? This is 1975. Frank says to her, after she says she's saving herself,
well, I'm sure you're not spent yet.
And I'm rolling my eyes. Because, like, also what a reaction. Like, she's hoping to have, like, a heartfelt. If she were in the room with Magenta and Columbia right now, and they were having a girls' gab sesh, and she's like, yeah, I've never done it with even Brad. It'd be like in Grease, where they all have, like, a funny, you're a virgin, you should try it. It's really fun. And, like, have a girls' song about it. Frank just, like, immediately jumps back into the act and is not interested in conversation, is not interested in helping her process the event that is occurring. He just tells her, like, well, we didn't really hook up yet. So she, at this point, for whatever reason she does, says, promise you won't tell Brad.
Which is a quick turn.
Mm-hmm.
It could genuinely be her changing her mind, or it could just be her appeasing her assailant as to avoid more severe consequences.
Yeah, because they also, if we judge based on the line that got cut during Hot Patootie, where Frank is like, so are doomed everybody who spurns my love.
Yes.
Right. Maybe Janet at this point is like, okay, if the options are either be seduced or get hacked by a pickaxe in a deep freeze, as long as Brad doesn't know about it, we can keep it a secret. And I think that's just more support that if Brad had tried to come into the room and had started sensually kissing her and things had led one thing to another and they had lost their virginities to each other, like, they also could have stayed in the car this whole time.
And slept in the car.
They could have slept in the car. Like, not even slept together. They could have just gotten in the back seat and waited out the storm. And if things got a little handsy, well, it ended up happening inevitably anyway. Like, they had no control over these events that are transpiring.
Yes.
They totally could have just hung out in the back seat, really had a good time, or not. Just listen to the rest of the Nixon speech. And when the storm is not so heavy of a downpour and they get their bearings and their orientation, they can walk toward Dr. Scott's place instead of in the wrong direction.
Yes.
You know? Frank responds to Janet,
"Cross my heart and hope to die."
which I don't think he does tell anybody that he and Janet sleep together.
I have a little bit of doubt, and we'll go over it just a little bit later. It pertains to a certain cut song.
I see. Okay.
So with that song cut, I don't think that he tells anyone, but also who knows, because Riff and Magenta have been watching her on the monitor.
Yeah.
So there's no telling who could be watching them.
That's true, that there's more than one. Do you think they can only see from the control panel? Or do you think they have... Oh, no, because Magenta and Columbia watch Janet in their room.
Yeah.
So there's...
Who knows? Who knows who could have been watching?
That's true.
Rocky could have been watching. Brad could have been watching. Maybe
He's
Brad
not.
has a TV screen in his room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who knows who is watching this? Frank obviously knows that there's a camera in there and that it is being broadcasted. So, cross my heart and hope to die, great. That means nothing.
They start not making out, just kind of like... It looks like he's just like tickling her. And Janet goes into the position that he just threatened to put her into. They start giggling so loud that when we cut back to Riff and Magenta in the laboratory, we can still kind of hear Janet and Frank laughing off screen, which makes me think that it's like an awkward, like my roommates are boning in the other room situation of like the whole house can hear Frank and Janet hooking up right now.
Either that or they still have it on the monitor.
But if anything, they have more risk of Brad walking in than at any point.
Yeah.
We cut back to the laboratory where the TV monitor has some interference. We cut out wide to Magenta mopping the floor very lazily. Not really mopping. She's just kind of like, leaning on the mop.
Slightly pushing it.
Yeah. And Riff turns off the at the control panel and walks over to Magenta. I think this is interesting that Magenta doesn't stay at the control panel the whole time. She sees the situation starting for whatever part in the plan that she needs to ensure it goes without a hitch. Mm-hmm. But otherwise she has no interest in seeing the entire seduction.
Yeah.
She goes away and she's doing literally a mindless task to avoid watching it. Riff walks over to her. They look at each other and kind of wiggle their eyebrows at each other, and Riff does his bouncing thumb dance, kind of over to Rocky, and then hands her that bloodied rag that he keeps with him at all points. We see Magenta look Riff up and down, she's either thinking that's a really good idea or his ass looks great in those jeans. We cut to Riff Raff walking to the foot of the bed where Rocky is lying asleep, face down, chained at the ankles. In the background between Rocky's head and Riff moving toward him, there's the paint mixer, sonic oscillator, life juice dispenser, and a beheaded Greek statue.
Yeah, it looks like a beheaded Discobolus. He's described as a youthful athlete throwing a discus. It was made by Myron in ancient Greece. It was originally a bronze statue, but the original was destroyed.
Mm-hmm. And the way it was sculpted, it is described as being an example of rhythmos, of perfect harmony and balance, because the way that the muscles are strained, the shape and the arc of his arm going through like the shoulder line. It is a gorgeous form.
It's very beautiful.
Myron is credited to be the first to master that style of sculpting, which is it's actually technically unnatural for the human body to throw a discus in that way.
Yeah.
His face shows very little emotion, very little strain. His body is in perfect proportion for symmetrical purposes. Kenneth Clark, an art historian, quotes, "To the modern eye, it may seem that Myron's desire for perfection has made him suppress too rigorously the sense of strain in the individual muscles."
I thought that this quote was really important, not only to art history in general, but also to Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Frank has created this insanely muscular creature, whatever you want to call Rocky.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But has he really thought on what strain, what toll
the human body takes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Has he taken into consideration the constraints of what a human body actually is?
Right, because he's just thinking, like, this is going to be my sex robot. Power on, and just, like, use until the batteries run out. But, like, Frank really has limited knowledge on what a human is actually made out of.
Yeah.
I just think it's so interesting because Frank is in pursuit of paradise and, like, a perfect form. After we cut to Riff moving across the bedroom, Rocky's still laying face down on the bed. We see an Atlas stained glass and 2 candelabras on either side of the this too is a canopy bed.
Yeah.
With black velvet curtains.
Frank has like a very stiff decoration aesthetic.
Yeah, he's like, every room must have a canopy. Every room.
So this Atlas stained glass is a nod to the Anglo Amalgamated Productions logo, which is another movie studio nod. But I thought it was really interesting that, again, we get another very muscular, very famous figure depicted. Mm-hmm. Because Atlas, if you don't know, is a Greek titan in Greek mythology who was condemned to hold up the sky in the west for all of eternity. He is said to be the axis around which the stars revolve. In some texts, he's credited with inventing the first celestial sphere and creating astronomy.
Interesting.
Yeah. And what's funny is Atlas is holding up the earth in the stained glass, but that's actually a really common misconception because in the original artwork of Atlas, he's holding up a sphere, yes, but it's a celestial sphere, so it's got stars and the sky in it. He's not holding up the earth. He never held up the earth. He held up the sky.
Art.
Yep.
It is, because it's a powerful image when you consider an entire universe on someone's back, and it being what Rocky has to look up to, like, constantly. At any point in that room, he's looking and being reminded that the expectations are high of him, and
you've got the whole world in your hands, literally.
Yeah, and
the sword of Damocles is hanging over your head. If you drop the sky, everything's your fault.
Riff picks up one of 2 of the candelabras, brings it to Rocky's sleeping form, and kind of like wiggles it to like give him a warning.
Yeah.
And Rocky wakes up, sits up, he's scared, he puts his hands in front of his face, and Riff Raff has this evil smile on his face, and he jerks the candelabra toward him. Get out of bed. Get up. Get up.
And again, we have another Frankenstein reference. Frankenstein's monster famously gets chased out of town by the villagers with their pitchforks and their torches. He's afraid of fire. Rocky is a Frankenstein's monster. Rocky is also afraid of fire.
I want to know if he's having that reaction because, like, is that just a normal reaction to someone having, like, flame being put in their face?
It could be.
You know, like, why? Why are you trying to light me on fire, dude? Like, what?
See, I would think that, except for the fact that he is so scared he literally breaks his metal chains and runs away.
Mm-hmm. Is there something with Riff approaching Rocky from the same direction as when he, like, took off his bandages and literally opened his eyes to light, and then he's again trying to, like, make him aware of a situation and, like...
I'm warning you that something bad is going to happen if you stay here.
Yeah, because he doesn't kill Rocky.
No.
He doesn't try to destroy Rocky. He's, like, giving him an opportunity to go away.
So, in a sense, he's tormenting him, but also he's kind of saving him from Frank. He's saying, you need to get out of here.
Yeah, or he hopes he goes missing.
Something.
And that too would be interesting if it's like Rocky's gone loose somewhere in the woods of Ohio. Frank, you need to go find him. And then Frank just gets lost in the wood, and Riff and Magenta take off. And this is in the commentary where Patricia Quinn starts to talk about how this is the most silent movie she's ever made. She's totally right.
Yeah.
This scene and most of Magenta's character is facial expressions, eye and lip movements, and eyebrows.
Yeah, she actually has very few lines if you really think about it.
Mm-hmm, which is incredible because she's so highly a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for a character that has so little dialogue and is effectively in a silent movie, like, and this scene is like a short silent film.
There's not a single word exchanged in this entire scene.
No, they have a plan that we as an audience are not privy to. And Rocky doesn't talk anyway. So it just makes for such an interesting scene of, like, he has no idea why he's being attacked in this way right now. And we don't either. Yeah. We're like, wait, what? Why is he letting Rocky loose? Like, this is kind of out of nowhere. Didn't he help create Rocky? Isn't he, like, a partial owner on this experiment? Like, why is this happening?
Richard really praises Jim Sharman's ability to flesh out this scene and to make sure that the point does get across, even though there are no lines. There's very little to actually create this storyline.
There's not quite a linear narrative. Like, if they had cut all of Riff and Magenta's weird side glances where they're not having dialogue, because that's what Richard O'Brien is talking about. He's like, if we were secondary characters in any other movie, this footage is something that would end up on the cutting room floor because it doesn't directly tell what is happening right now in the A plot, which is what's happening with Frank and Brad and Janet. But because there's such a deep B plot, like, it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
I love that we get revealed to Riff and Magenta's... It's like a gradual mutiny.
Yes.
Of, we're going to just start slowly dismantling every part of the ship. We're going to make this not work out for him. So taking over is very easy. And it is.
It turns out to be, yes.
It turns out to be so easy because everything went exactly according to plan.
Yep.
And they saw it through, and then it was just, well, okay, I guess you can have a sayonara number, I guess.
Rocky puts his hands up to his face, backs away from the flame. He stands on the bed and pulls at the chain around his ankle. Riff laughs again, thrusting the candelabra towards him. Rocky breaks the chain, and the bed starts to collapse. He escapes through the curtain, and the bed is falling on Riff Raff.
And he's still just like, okay, bye. Bye, Rocky. Keep going.
Yeah, he's not really chasing him.
No.
He's just kind of casually walking after him.
Yeah, he's like, okay, just making sure that you go all the way out. Rocky is so strong that he's either able to break through those metal chains or break, like, the physical bed frame of that canopy to be able to escape. He runs straight down that elevator shaft. He makes a beeline right for it because Rocky already made 2 full revolutions around the lab and knew there's no exits. So he went straight toward the elevator shaft. The camera pans with him as Magenta and Riff Raff kind of swoop in on the elevator from either side. Riff throws a candle down, like, stay gone, don't come back.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting to me because Rocky knew
exactly where to go.
Right, that was his method of escape. That could even have been what he's been thinking about this whole time, laying in bed. How do I get out of here?
It makes me wonder if Eddie knew the escape routes, so now Rocky knows the escape routes.
Yep. Rocky climbs down the shaft with the chains hanging around his ankle. He's just going like a scaffolding. We cut back to Magenta and Riff, who look back at each other and make their strange Transylvanian
hand signal
that Richard O'Brien is like, what do the kids call it? Elbow sex? And Patricia's like, I prefer elbow copulation.
It's hilarious to me because Patricia has zero idea that this is incestuous at all. She was like, did you know the kids say that we're incestuous? And Richard's like, yeah, that was always in the back of my mind. I knew that we were incestuous.
Because he wrote the show, so he knew his characters. And she's like, that was never a part of it for me. Like, I never thought that was how it was. And so it's so interesting because it does play off, and he talks about it in the commentary, that it plays off as like an aloofness and an innocence and an indifference to Riff's pursuit of her. And that it's like, okay, well, whatever you need to do, Riff Raff, like, I'm not interested in this at all. Very interesting that they're brother and sister. Because then he puts his arms around her and gives her a Dracula kiss on the neck.
Yes.
She screeches. And we get that score again in the background, the elbow sex theme.
Yes.
Of like, everything is going exactly to plan. We're checking the tasks off one by one. They've been doing this elbow sex, I noticed, at any moment where they're making deliberate actions on the plot. Like, otherwise, Riff and Magenta are pretty much just observing the night. They're letting things kind of go how they go, except for when they let Brad and Janet walk into the ballroom. They elbow sexed because he just as easily could have said, no, sorry, no phone, and slammed the door in their face, and then then Brad and Janet are just standing on the porch for the rest of the night. No, he made the decision, which means it was step one. And then they do it again now. They do it again when everyone's been Medusa'd.
Yes.
Over Dr. Scott. And then
it's like every item on their checklist, as soon as it gets checked off, that's when they do their Transylvanian salute.
Yep. If we were shadow casting.
So, this one is actually really easy. This whole section that we're covering plays pretty straight from screen. It's not any really bells or whistles. Basically, you're going to have Rocky laying on the stage, face down. You can either do it butt to audience or face to audience, whichever your Rocky is most comfortable with.
I've seen Riffs get the candelabra and do, like, fun insertion from behind jokes for Rocky.
And Riff, you don't have to use a candelabra. You can use literally anything. We have a great photo of one of our friends, Corey, who is playing Riff Raff and has an axe.
Ah, yes.
You can use literally any prop as long as it's something frightening for Rocky to react to.
Or not. It can be a...
pantomime?
No, I think, like, if you got, like, a rubber snake.
Oh, chicken?
or rubber chicken. Yeah, and you're just like wiggling it in his face, and he's like, stop. I don't like this. He's just like inconvenienced by it as opposed to scared by it.
And then Rocky, you'll stand up, pretend to break your chains, and
take off
running down the audience.
Riff and Magenta will stay on stage. They'll do their elbow sex. Before we cut back to Rocky, we get this candelabra kind of partially obscuring and also completely illuminating Riff and Magenta. It like perfectly fits their shape. I love the way that it looks. And I like that this is all happening right in front of our eyes. And we see that Riff and Magenta are not, it's not a secret plan. Like, they don't show up for the takeover at the end of the movie and we're surprised by them. Rocky jumps down from the elevator shaft and runs for the front door. He does like a look around of like, which way did I drop down here? That way is where I need to go. That's the exit. Ding. He knows exactly where to go.
Makes a beeline.
It kind of made me think of how Eddie, when he gets out of the deep freeze, how he looks around and he gets his bearings. Mm-hmm. It's kind of similar.
Yeah, totally.
And now we are back in not the same room, but probably the same room. Probably the same production.
Probably literally exactly the same room, but with different lighting.
Yes. The two scenes are so different for them being
the same.
The exact same. And then they're also so similar for them being so different.
And I do want to remind everyone that, again, this lighting is not a full wash like we had in Janet's room. It's not the full pink. It's just regular lighting with a little bit of blue in the background. It's just like a blue backlighting, but it is definitely not that full wash effect like we get at Janet's.
Yeah, because I think if we're watching a show live and there are lights in the theater that we're using to, we're mirroring what's happening on the screen and we do like pink lights, we'll use blue lights to differentiate the scenes.
Yeah.
You don't even realize that Brad is in a very well-lit room. Mm-hmm. Considering he's supposed to be sleeping in there. Like, it's super bright. He's, like, laying in bed with his arms crossed, like he's mad. Like, he can't believe that he's still up. How'd he get tricked into spending the night? Because he didn't like it when... He has not enjoyed Frank being naked in front of Janet.
No.
So it's like, well, maybe he's also concerned.
He could be concerned, because he definitely has, like, a thinking face on. You can tell that he's sitting there, brow a little furrowed. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Maybe tapping his little feet a little bit in bed. Like, he's definitely thinking about something.
And, like, I hope he is. I hope he's concerned for Janet. And... again, fuck politeness. If he is having a concern for Janet, he should go find her and not just, like, assume everything is okay in this strange place with a bunch of strangers they don't know.
Yeah.
But he's still got his glasses on.
Mm-hmm. He is definitely not asleep.
Not asleep. And back at his old tricks, we have a silhouette enter the room with Janet's voice, who says, "Oh, Brad, darling, it's no good here. It will destroy us." Frank doesn't give Brad the opportunity to object or respond. She just runs in. Yeah.
As soon as she opens that door, Brad checks his watch like, Janet, what the hell time is it?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting a visitor. Frank's impression of Janet is not nearly as convincing in the lighting. Like,
also, that is not a good Janet wig, Frank.
Oh, boy. We've seen some bad Janet wigs.
But I think Frank's might be the worst.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So if you're a Frank performer, find the worst Janet wig possible.
And put that on top of your Frank wig.
Yeah, for this scene. Because even when I think that's why he doesn't stop either when he's walking in, because then...
it would be, like, very easy for Brad to go, that's not Janet. That's weird.
He runs over, or even for us as audience members, because Tim runs so fast to the bed that now he's mostly obscured by the bed. And how he gets into the bed, he keeps, like, how broad his shoulders are. He keeps that, like, really condensed, and you only see his knees, really. So you're kind of like, that's not the most feminine figure I'm looking at right now. And that's definitely not stunning, gorgeous, amazing bombshell Susan Sarandon right now, running in with that wig on her head. Like, I'm less convinced by this impersonation of Frank's than I am of his impersonation of Brad.
Yes.
Brad responds to who he thinks is Janet.
Don't worry, Janet. We'll be away from here in the morning.
Which, if things go exactly according to Frank's plan, would be true. They would be taking the entire house back to Transylvania with all of the inhabitants.
Would they? Is Frank planning on leaving? Or I think Frank is planning on staying on Earth and just keep the couples coming.
Well, because when he Medusas them and Janet says, "You mean he's going to send us to another planet?" You know?
But did he originally have the plan, or did he decide to do that once everything started going wrong?
Yeah, if he's a serial murderer and he's getting away with this and he can keep doing this every single week. So there are some cut lines at this point from the stage show that are pretty relevant for the
context.
Characters. Yeah.
Brad would continue, you smell so good.
Which is funny because he's saying, like, Frank, ooh, wow, I love your perfume. For 4711, it smells amazing. It suggests that he would initiate some kind of sexual contact with Janet, to which she'd respond, "Oh, Brad, oh no, not till after the wedding, darling." Which is not Janet suggesting that. That's Frank suggesting that that is why Janet won't have sex with Brad yet.
Brad sits up. All right, Janet, I understand.
This should have stayed in the movie.
Yeah.
We should have seen one moment of, like,
actual consent.
Yeah, one moment of, I understand this isn't what you want to do anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it gives us a little bit of a break but I think that tells us that Brad is human. Like, he is able to see the emotion of the situation.
The yickiness.
Maybe this is what's happened before. Maybe he's tried to initiate something. She's said, "Oh, not yet." Yeah. So he's comfortable with saying, "I understand," to her. I'm a Brad stan. The stage show proceeds with Frank as Janet saying, "Maybe we could try it this way."
And rolling over. Brad, surprisedly, says, "Janet, oh, yeah, it's all right. Janet, everything's gonna be all right."
And again, another, like, I'm gonna fumble for the lights and turn the lights on and have a light reveal that this is not, in fact, Susan Sarandon. Instead, we get him kind of stroking Tim Curry's wigged head as he says, "Oh, Brad, you're so strong and protective." And Brad is just, like, petting the heck out of this hair.
Yeah, like, very aggressively petting who is supposed to be Janet's head.
Yeah, enough to de-wig Frank. It's not so much where Janet kind of is, like, scruffling his hair and it's like it comes loose. Like, he pets it off of Frank's head. And he... You! Because he, too, doesn't know Frank's name. It's you! Frank, he pushes him away. Brad's glasses get kind of jumbled. He puts them back on. Frank responds, "I'm afraid so, Brad. But wasn't it nice?"
Again, half consent does not exist.
No, at this point, he should have reacted how Brad was reacting to Janet in the stage show a moment ago of, like,
I understand.
"Oh,
I'm
you
sorry.
didn't recognize it was me. Okay, well, now that you know it's me, and I was playing a prank on you, Are you still interested?
No? Okay, I'm gonna
go. Right. Brad pushes Frank off of him, sits up and says,
what have you done with Janet?
And he looks at the door because, like, just a moment ago, he saw Janet walking in the bedroom. And he's, like, too disoriented by how quickly the shape in front of him has shifted. At this point, he's like, did you visit her first? Are you visiting her next? Did she too get murdered? They're having the same concerns for each other. Frank responds, nothing. Why do you think I should?
It's the same exact response that he gave to Janet. So this could be totally part of his ploy, which is, oh, no, I haven't done anything yet. But Wink. If you don't consent, then I'm going to.
Oh, yeah. If I don't get my rocks off here, I'm going to have to ask somebody else. Ugh, skeezy. And what if Frank is in both places at the same time?
Because his lines are super similar.
Yes.
It could be a possibility, honestly.
And that's why he says to both of them, nothing. Like, he truly hasn't done anything to either of them yet. If these scenes are happening concurrently. Or he's outright lying to Brad.
Which is definitely a possibility.
Which he doesn't tell him immediately. He did tell Janet. He wouldn't tell Brad, so he's not breaking his promise.
Yeah.
I guess. And Brad is not happy about this. He sits up. He says,
you tricked me. I wouldn't have. I've never.
Never what? Never what? Is he also, so I think he's also a virgin.
Yeah. But is he saying he's never had sex, or he's never been interested in homosexuality before?
Right. Brad is very confused at all points of this movie. He doesn't quite, I don't think he quite knows still if Frank is a woman or a man. And he's still confused about, like, being attracted to him. He is reacting in the same way Janet does, to a T, that it implies, for me at least, Brad would have made their first time special because they're having the same emotional reaction.
Yeah.
They could have bonded together over this. He would have... Brad is so respectable, and he has respected the boundaries of their sexual expectations so far in their relationship.
Yeah, he's very aware of what Janet is and is not comfortable with, it seems like. And if he isn't aware, as soon as she voices a concern, he reacts appropriately from what we can see.
And it just makes me feel bad, again, in a different way, because I do think that Brad and Janet are missing out on something special with each other, and it makes me sad for their characters that if we can look at the rest of the movie and the sequel material as the beginning of their unraveling as both a couple and as people, like mentally unraveling.
Yeah. Would it have happened the same if this encounter had not happened?
Yeah, or if they had been there for each other. If it wouldn't have been a traumatic experience. If it had been a very romantic, wonderful experience, like Eddie was just singing about, sex can be really, really wonderful. And it can be really, really fun. And it can be with people that you really, really love and really enjoy and think are fun.
Brad turns away humiliated.
Traumatized. Completely. Frank says, "Oh, yes, I know. But it wasn't all bad, is it? Not even half bad." And he pushes him back down onto the bed. "I think you really quite enjoyed it." And starts kissing him down his chest. Says, so soft. You're so sensual." This is all Frank knowing that he's lured Brad under false pretenses.
Yes.
And like, what is there to quite enjoy? They cuddled for like 2 minutes, and Brad kind of figured things out pretty quickly and expressed his discomfort. I don't see what he was possibly enjoying. Other than maybe just, company after being separated from the person you came with. Brad says,
Stop. No, I mean Janet. Janet!
"Shush. Janet's probably asleep by now. Do you want her to see you like this?" And he does the same.
Legs up in the air, pulling him onto his back, the same exact shoop.
Brad, okay, when he's like getting turned on, he too is thinking about Janet and is enjoying the thought of Janet. And when he gets like whipped onto his back, he is stiff like a board. Like his legs are rigid and he like rocks back up because he's so uncomfortable. He's like in shock. You see Barry's face. He's like,
Yeah, he's totally in shock because once again, we said this scene is more well lit than Janet's scene. So Janet's, we really did get pretty much just silhouettes, whereas in this scene, we're getting a little bit more facial expression. We're getting a little bit more than a silhouette.
Brad responds,
Like this? Like how? It's your fault. You're to blame. I thought it was the real thing. Again, such a similar line, if not exactly the same,
it's
to
mirrored.
Janet's.
Yeah, it's a mirrored, like, again, Frank loves his mirror images. Could be happening at the exact same time.
But it still, again, shows the bond that Brad and Janet have. The reason that they have been pulled together so magnetically, because they are so connected.
He says he thought it was the real thing. So he totally would have let Janet seduce him.
Yeah.
He thought it was the real thing. That's fair. That's absolutely valid. Oh my gosh. But okay, imagine. Brad is laying in bed. He's checking the time because he's like, what time is it? And Frank is in the other room with Janet. If he left and went into the other room, I'm just trying to think, like, what that scene would be like. Like, what would have happened if Brad had decided, like, I am going to go look for Janet, and he had stumbled upon her?
Yeah. Would he have been so dominant? Would he have started a fight? Do you think Brad would fight for Janet?
I don't think he would. I think he would delude himself into thinking that, like, he's not. I don't think that's who that is. And would probably, like, leave. Or he would walk over and pull the canopy open and
cry.
Yeah, I don't know. What is he going to do? Hit Frank? Like, no, he wouldn't. That's the problem, is like Frank has put himself in such a position of power over them that, like, I don't think if Brad saw it happening right in front of his face, because when Janet runs to Rocky at the dinner scene, he doesn't run over to Rocky and be mad at Rocky and, like, get away from my girl. No, he's just like, he can't believe his eyes.
Yeah.
You know?
Frank then says,
"Oh, come on, Brad. Admit it. It was enjoyable, wasn't it? There's no crime in giving yourself over to pleasure." "Oh, Brad, you've wasted so much time already. Janet needn't know. I wouldn't tell her."
"No crime in giving yourself over to pleasure, huh?"
That is his anthem that he proclaims later in the movie. There are quite a few crimes, though, that are associated with one giving oneself over to pleasure.
Absolutely.
quite a few, yes. Actually.
And again, we have more gaslighting in this line. Just gaslighting after gaslighting with both Janet and Brad. It's super uncomfortable, super triggering. So it's just yicky after yicky with Frank.
And he is, first of all, what is he suggesting that Brad's wasted time over? Like, experimenting in general, or like experimenting if you're questioning your sexuality, like, you should just go for it, you're wasting time?
Brad responds, "You promise you won't tell?" Which, again, another very quick turn of events, which could be genuine consent, except he never says yes. He never says yes.
That's true. He just kind of proceeds, And it's also, so in Janet's situation, she suggests, promise you won't tell Brad. Like, I think that is a little bit more consensual, whereas Frank is suggesting to Brad, Janet doesn't need to know.
I won't tell her.
Like, that's... Okay, now we're into shady business. Why wouldn't Janet need to know? Like, that's actually kind of an interesting conversation to have with Janet. If Brad is questioning his sexuality,
yeah,
he probably should talk to Janet about it. And for Frank to be suggesting and forcing Brad to cheat on Janet and, like, don't worry, I won't tell. It's like, it's just very different from Janet than almost proposing the idea of, like, promise you won't tell Brad.
Well, and also the way in which the lines are spoken, the delivery is different for the both of them.
And he doesn't, you're right, he doesn't provide explicit consent.
Neither of them do.
No, Frank just continues, on my mother's grave.
Which, hi, lie? Your mom's not dead.
Or is she? Or is she not? I don't know. Who is she? She's a mystery. She definitely is the ultimate mega villain, though.
Yes. Above everyone else, she is who sent Frank to Earth on this mission. So she is the ultimate villain.
Right.
She is the end level bad guy that you fight at the very end of a video game. If we did end up getting Revenge of the Old Queen, and we take it as canon, then his mother is still alive.
Okay.
So, if we do take it as canon, then Frank is straight up lying to Brad.
Brad then, too, winds up with his legs in the air in the same position Frank also threatened to put him into, while Frank starts swallowing raw eggs, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what he called it.
Yeah. And a beeping noise off screen suddenly as we cut to another TV monitor of Riff Raff appearing on the screen above the bed in Brad's room. I'm now questioning, like, what the other side of Janet's surveillance system looked like.
Yeah, was it just a TV? Maybe she saw her own reflection in the TV. It reminded her, oh gosh, I'm like really uncovered, and then covered herself back up. You know?
I was thinking, like, what if... Okay, no, okay. She just sees her... Yeah. Like, she just sees herself in the reflection. Okay, that's a believable... I don't think Janet would be comfortable with knowing there was a camera on her.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the monitor goes both ways. So, like, if it's turned on, you can see Riff can see you, or whoever's on the other side. But if your TV screen is turned off, then you can't see the other person on the other side. You know what I'm saying?
Or what if Janet was looking at the monitor and Riff and Magenta were looking back at her, and she's like, Riff and Magenta are looking at me, oh no!
That could be a possibility as well. She just sees their faces peering into her, which is very creepy.
That's so good. It's basically like if someone FaceTimes you now. Just in general, if someone FaceTimes
but, like,
you.
unconsensually FaceTiming someone is not... I don't like that.
I'm just thinking of when, like, you start a FaceTime and it's just like, yeah, I'm looking at two people looking at me.
I start a FaceTime with you, and your camera turns on before you accept the call, so I can just watch what you're doing while you're not answering my call, because that's what this is.
Yeah. It's the call connects while it's still ringing, and Janet's making the face of, like, deny call.
Exactly. So once Riff Raff's face appears on the screen above the bed, Riff Raff says, Master, Rocky has broken his chains and vanished. The new playmate is loose and somewhere in the castle grounds. Magenta has just released the dogs.
And you hear those dogs barking in the background. We joke that they're sometimes Magenta's sisters. Is Riff just tormenting Rocky so he can torment Frank?
I mean, it's definitely a possibility.
Because he's not revealing... He's making a narrative up as well of like, yeah, Rocky broke his own chains.
I had nothing to do with it.
I just looked over there and he was missing. Like, he's somewhere in the castle grounds. And it's like, are you telling me that there isn't some video feed somewhere, anywhere, that Riff could look onto to find Rocky? There's surveillance cameras everywhere. They totally would have been able to look at it. But it's... Frank doesn't care.
Yeah.
Now Riff is saying the puppy needs to go outside because the puppy hasn't been walked in a few hours. And Frank is like, I'll get to it later. And literally.
Yeah, because what does Frank say?
Coming.
Completely disregards it.
Uh-huh. And he doesn't get to it. We get a whole nother musical number.
Yeah. Before Frank even addresses the fact that Rocky had gotten out.
Yeah. And if he's a evil scientist with plots to contain, you know, having an experiment running loose is literally like Frankenstein going into the town and like, oh no, what if the town sees him and now the town knows that I'm doing these experiments?
Yeah.
But he doesn't ultimately care. Like, I think that's where Riff Raff's coming from, where it's like your lifestyle is so extreme that like you're not even keeping track of your experiments. Like, you so would prefer to have sex with Brad.
Anyone.
If that's how he is, that's like the equivalent of like drinking on the job.
Yeah.
Like, what are you, Frank, you're not focusing. You said you were going to make a man. Like, now you have to take care of the man.
No, it's fine. He's fine. The dog's got him. It's fine.
I love this image too because you see Riff's, there's like a hook sticking out of his shoulder that looks, it's how like the hump is maintained in his costume.
It looks like a wire hanger though.
Yeah. The fact that we're seeing it, I think we're getting like a little bit of a preview of like, Riff doesn't actually look like this. This is what Frank has put him and Magenta into. This isn't their chosen workwear.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw Riff at the beginning at the church too. He doesn't have a hump then either.
No.
It's like Frank has this idea that Igors are supposed to be these disfigured, misshapen figures that he needs Riff Raff to have a hump. And it's like, I love the idea that it's cosmetic completely and like installed in his jacket.
Yeah, totally.
So dumb.
As for shadow casting, again, like I said previously, this entire section is pretty straight from screen. You're going to enter in on the side of the screen that Brad or Janet enters from. Mm-hmm. Columbia will toss you a robe.
Yeah, as Janet, I'll run across and do like a peer into the audience and mimic how Susan looks into the monitor. I'll exit briefly so Brad can have his same blocking.
As Brad, I will catch my robe, look at it, get confused, walk off stage so that Rocky and Riff can have their moment. Janet will come back on.
Sometimes, depending on the cast, there'll be a sheer sheet that will either do a pink or blue, and or sometimes you'll just go au natural on the stage.
I know that Sins has like an actual sheet, like it's not sheer. They just use Virgins to hold up an actual sheet and then they light it from the back, so you really do just get the silhouettes.
At Chaos, we have like a
shears.
Yeah, shears. And we'll have like Transylvanians holding it, or I do love the idea of having virgins from the audience get to audience participate. This scene is uncomfortable as a Shadowcast performer because
if you don't have a close relationship with your Frank, if you have not communicated to your Frank what you are okay with and what you're not okay with, it is very easy to go overboard and make someone feel very, very uncomfortable, if not violated.
Yes.
So please make sure that if you are a Brad, a Janet, or a Frank, that you openly communicate with your other cast members on what you're okay with and what you are not okay with.
Because the blocking can be done. So in Sin's example, where they have backlit the performers, you don't even need
to touch at all.
No, you can have Frank completely on the other side of whoever is lying closest to the curtain, and just do fun, like, shadow puppet,
which is usually what silhouettes. They do. They'll usually have props, and with Brad, they'll pretend that Frank is pulling weird stuff out of his butt. It's really great. So, like, they don't even need to be touching at all, which I really do love the way that Sins does that.
Yeah.
I think it's great.
I'm having so much fun, you know? I'm performing the show. I get to this scene, and I remember that it happens, and it is so fast that
you almost forget it's there.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't mentally prepare for it.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, Rocky and theaters that host shadowcasts is not a place for predators.
Yes.
I do not like when people use the environment that can be quite vulnerable to, at the least, make someone uncomfortable, but at the worst,
use it grounds for sexual assault or for grooming or for anything like that, because we do have young, vulnerable people there who can be influenced, and this is not the place for that.
No, and it doesn't need to be a contact sport.
No.
You don't need to, the reason it's behind a curtain in the first place is so it can be a little mysterious, a little what's kind of going on over there. I don't really get the whole story. I don't really know exactly if they're really enjoying it, if they really hate it, it brings up all of these questions in the viewer, which is why it's an important scene, because I think it does allow a person to go through this experience in a somewhat, I don't want to say a protected environment. I mean it in the sense, like, you go to see movies to experience things that you otherwise do not want to experience in real life. I think it's important in that sense because it allows you and I to have a conversation about, if I were in Janet's position, I would kick Frank in the balls
and get the hell out of there.
Fuck out of there, because fuck politeness. And that wasn't something that people were talking about in 1975.
Mm-mm.
So it is an important conversation to have, however difficult it might be. But same goes for addressing the community of shadow casting. It can only be as safe as we make it.
For a long time, we as a collective allowed people to be in our community that should not have had a place there. And I am so proud of everyone in the community that is working as hard as possible to make this a safe space for everyone.
Yes. Because that's what we all want it to be.
Yeah.
We all want it to be somewhere where we can dress up in our skivvies and run around and not feel in fear of getting pinched or poked or tickled or
anything that we don't want.
No. So just as important as the consent in this segment has been, like, consent in a shadowcast is
just as important.
Well, I would say more important because it's real people. Like, now we're not talking about characters anymore. We're talking about actual people who put themselves in vulnerable situations wearing very little clothing. And it's already hard to do that on a stage full of people you don't know. So the least you can do is make it as safe as possible for each other.
Absolutely. Please, please, please make sure that you are in really close communication with the rest of the people that you are performing with. After we get the scene with Riff and Brad, we cut back to Janet's room.
It's like there's static, right? There's like, it like, and now we're back on Janet.
Yes.
And she's in the middle of a panic attack.
Yeah.
Because she's just lost her virginity and Frank didn't even bother to cuddle for 5 minutes.
He just boop out of there and
he
went
literally
to Brad.
just like ditched her. And she says, "What's happening here?" Quick cut. Where's Brad? Quick cut. Where's anybody? She feels so isolated that like she'd take Frank again at this point. Like she feels so alone, uncomfortable, maybe raped.
Yeah.
And where is anybody in this castle, man?
I think it's important to note that there is no longer a red filter over Janet's scenes. It's like she has been snapped back into reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is where a song is cut from the movie.
Yes, here is the mysterious song Once in a While, which is Brad's beautiful ballad. Honestly, one of my favorite songs from this show, even though it was cut from the movie.
Just not because you haven't heard it 1.5 million times?
But I have. You don't know my Spotify history.
Like, it still's got that, like, fresh thing for me because it's not in every watching of the movie. And it's so...
What's interesting about this song is in the stage show, it would come after Toucha Touch Me.
Mm-hmm.
So the lyrics would make more sense if it did take place after that song, but since it has been moved to before that song, it implies a little bit different of a message.
Right. If he's turning a TV monitor to finding Rocky and Janet in a tank alongside Riff and Frank, he's having like a ballad aside to himself of like, I can't believe Janet hooked up with Rocky behind my back. But with him singing it just as like a post-coital, just hooked up
with Frank, it sort of implies that Frank has disclosed, yeah, I just did that with Janet, so you're not special because me and her had this same thing going on.
Or do you think that it's like something awakened in Brad by being with Frank?
I don't think that that's what the lyrics are implying.
Okay. Well, let's get into them.
Yes.
He begins by saying, well, actually...
We'll just play you a clip.
Yeah.
Here's the original recording from the Roxy cast in 1974.
Once in a while, she don't wanna call you. Speaking on the telephone. And once in your life, she don't wanna know you. You look around, the one you found, she is gone.
So this first verse to me is almost Brad feeling abandoned. Janet doesn't want to call him. She won't talk to him on the phone. She's gone when he looks around. He can't find her. So is he sleeping with Frank because he just feels like Janet doesn't care anymore? You know? It's just so hard to interpret this song because it comes at such a different point in the plot than it does originally.
Yeah. So the other reason this song was cut was the verses were intercut with Janet's later dialogue. It totally, like, would change the flow of the movie.
It would slow down the pace. It would make it feel a lot more jumbly, I feel like.
It'd be too cheesy because, okay, so you can watch the deleted scene.
Yes.
On the Blu-ray, or if you have it on your Apple TV, you can watch it on Apple TV.
It's also on YouTube. We're
Yes.
going to post it on our blog.
Yes. And so you can watch it. You can
Make your own
feel
decisions.
How you feel about it. How you feel about the song in general.
To warn you, though, it is a montage sequence for the first, 45 seconds of the song, which is probably a big reason of why it got cut, because it feels so cheesy.
Yeah, and it's confusing because, well, watching the deleted scene, I was like, oh, it's just a clip video to the cut song, and we're just seeing various footage from the movie. Like, halfway through, it kicks into real footage of Barry singing,
Sitting on the edge of the bed, smoking a cigarette.
which we will insert here.
And that's all the time that it takes for a heart to turn to stone. The sweeter the wine, the harder to make the break. You hear something about someone you thought you'd known.
And it's so cheesy because now I feel like I'm in a 70s music video of, like, with the intercuts of Janet looking very...
A single tear falling down her cheek.
It's, like, so Playboy. Those
Yeah.
photos, or those... They're basically stills.
Yeah, I mean, she moves very, very slightly in them.
They're glamour shots.
Absolutely. And does it seem to you like every time we cut to Brad in his room, it gets bluer and bluer?
Yeah.
Is that just him becoming more and more sad boy?
Yes, definitely. Because we see Frank just laying in the back of the bed.
Yeah.
Passed out.
Towards the end of the video, you can see him. Literally, he looks like a porcelain doll, just very peacefully sleeping on the bed.
Totally oblivious to Brad's lamenting. I don't think... So if we were going to cut to Janet and she were going to have lines in those moments, combined with all of the other random quick cuts, scene changes...
It's just too much.
Setting changes. They probably looked at the discombobulation of the movie already and we're like, we need to trim where we can, guys. We need to stop cutting back to other moments in this movie, because they do it later too when they jump back to Time Warp at Takeover.
Yeah.
That's kind of jarring. And I'm thinking if we were sitting here and watching it and then we were having flashbacks of Damn It Janet and Brad walking through the graveyard at the beginning of the movie, it's like, I don't need to be reminded of this. We just watched it. I remember that they got engaged earlier tonight. Why is Brad, lamenting so hard on the events of the evening?
For this last little section of this song, we're going to give you the recording of the remakes version of Once in a While by Ryan McCartan.
But can you tell me why we're listening to this version?
Honestly, I'm going to admit it right now. He was a great Brad. Great casting choice. Loved Ryan McCartan. Shining moment of the remake for me. Everything else could have left, but I would have kept him. He was honestly really great, and I love his voice.
Well, he also is a Barry Bostwick casting choice. He's a Broadway performer that has a gorgeous tenor voice and is tall, dark, and handsome, kind of lean, kind of muscular.
Also can play a good bad boy because he was JD in the Heathers musical. So I give it to him. They did really good with that casting choice, and I'm not going to say anything else about the rest of it. So please enjoy Ryan McCartan as Brad during Once in a While.
So baby, don't cry like there's no tomorrow. After the night, there's a brand new day, and there'll be no pain and no more sorrow. So wash your face and phone my place, it'll be okay. That's all the time that it takes for a heart to beat again. So give me a sign that a lover makes. You look around, the one you found is back again.
That song being cut, we don't get revealed that Brad, like, fully went all the way with Frank yet. So Janet has just asked, "Where's anybody?" And we cut to Rocky running through probably the front of the castle in a downpour that's just insane. He can barely see through it. Like, Peter Hinwood is, like, ducking his head, and
Yeah.
Susan Sarandon caught pneumonia in this downpour that they were putting them through on set. Like, Rocky is not prepared to do a run for his life in those gold booty shorts. That's a surefire way to catch pneumonia.
Yes.
And he's also getting okay, I can't. These dogs are so cute. They're just so cute. I want to say he's getting pursued by them because it's like he's got, like, dog food in his pants. Like, they're like, they're really chasing after him.
So in the script, it says, a shot of a pack of huge Alsatians careening around the castle grounds. They are chasing a bewildered Rocky. And Haley and I were like,
What is an Alsatian?
Alsatians? I've never heard of that before. Looked it up. It's German Shepherd. It's literally the British word for German Shepherd. So we're just dumb, apparently.
I think they purposefully picked Alsatians because it kind of looks like Martians.
True.
Like, I think Richard O'Brien was like, if they're aliens, they would have a dog. I just think he was like, fun. Alsatians.
We also get this really fun music in the background for like 3 seconds, and then it stops.
Just as he's running through that rain. And we quick cut back to Janet as she's getting into the elevator. So maybe the bedroom she was in was like on the 2nd floor. Maybe. She says, "Oh, Brad." And now from this point forward, all of these super fast quick shots are expediting her movement and the action of the scene. We're like cutting out all extraneous movement, and we're literally just getting the snippets of
her action that would be during Once in a While.
Yeah, exactly. Her scripted lines that were going to be intercut with Brad's number. I love how fast it moves, though, because she feels so frantic. It feels like she's looking around, and that's how fast she's looking around.
It feels really panicky, which I think helps to build the emotion of this scene.
Mm-hmm. She says, "Oh, Brad," slams the elevator door. "Brad, my darling, how could I have done this to you?" And then very soberly presses the elevator button. Instead of, like, going room to room looking for Brad, she goes to the elevator. Does she think that he's going to be in the lab?
Yeah, she just immediately goes straight up to the lab.
This is, like, kind of a canned delivery of, like, "Oh, I'm so dramatic. I can't believe I did this to him." I don't know. I think it's genuine, though. I think she is distraught.
Okay.
like she's had long enough time to sit and think in the bedroom by herself that she's like,
You can have your wrong opinion. To me, it feels like I should be feeling guilty right now, so I'm gonna act like I feel really guilty.
but she actually feels
Liberated. That's, to me, how it reads. Where it's like, oh shit, I just did this really bad thing. How am I supposed to be acting? I should go look for Brad. Oh fuck. And that's why she's panicking, is because she's like, what did I do? What do I do
Yeah.
now?
she's like still kind of excited.
Yeah.
And okay, I can see that.
That's how it plays to me.
Because
But
she
of
does have a little bit of a smile
She does.
on her face. Like,
It's a little smirky. It's a little over dramatically acted, which is like, look at me.
it's definitely Janet drama.
Yes.
100%. The elevator stops. She opens the gate, leaves the elevator, puts her hand to her head. Oh, if only we hadn't made this journey. Quick cut of her standing in front of the control panel, biting her nails on her left hand. Always displaying her engagement ring.
It's important.
She always, like, you have to see it. Okay, guys.
It's important. I'm an engaged woman. How could this happen to me?
If only the car hadn't broken down. Another quick cut of her magnetically attaching her bra straps to the tank. If only we were amongst friends or sane persons.
See what I mean? Like, it feels very,
I guess
how
it's a little
should I
dramatic.
act right now?
So talking about life is an illusion, she's talking about like other choices she could have made.
If only.
Uh-huh, if only we hadn't decided to visit Dr. Scott.
And also, why did you decide to visit Dr. Scott,
Yeah, of
your
all
science
people.
teacher?
Yeah, maybe if you decided to just not go at all. Maybe if you'd had a cool night in on a Saturday night and like taken in a movie and the two of you could have just watched a movie together and hooked up.
Maybe.
You know? If only she hadn't made the journey. If only they'd waited out the storm in the car. You know? If only they had thought just an inkling. Maybe this is like a House of a Thousand Corpses situation where I don't want to be asking for help and thinking that I've stumbled upon a lighthouse when it's a literal cannibal cult. Maybe you should have considered that, you guys, before you got out in the rain and just started walking around.
Exactly. And Krim is sort of on the same mindset as us, because here is his cut line. If and only, two small words. Words which kept repeating themselves again and again in Janet's thoughts. But it was too late to go back now. It was as if she was riding a giant tidal wave. It would be folly to fight against it. Her only chance would be to ride it out, adapt, and perhaps also to survive.
I wish they could have put that with the emotion monologue. If Janet allowed herself to be seduced by Frank because she knew the alternative was murder, that's using herself for power.
Yes.
If she's deciding now she has sexual urges and she's going to find someone to relieve her sexual urges, that is her choice. She is surviving. She is adapting. If Brad is not going to be there to save her, then she should find another person to protect her if she's looking for protection.
Yep.
But that's cut because instead, Janet clasps her hands together, turns straight to the camera, and says, "Oh, Brad, what have they done with him?" And we get cut directly to her over at the TV monitor. She pulls that lever one time and it gets right to the correct channel, I guess. It was already pre-programmed to be Brad conveying the smoking hot sex he just had.
He's sitting on the edge of the bed with Frank lounging in the background, and he's smoking a cigarette.
And that's usually like, now it's a parody where you see two characters in a show like enjoying a cigarette post-coital. But does that mean that they actually did go all the way? It wasn't just like, hand stuff,
As
fun
far
stuff?
as this trope goes, it is implied that they went all the way, because that's genuinely the trope, is you smoke a cigarette after sex.
I like that she cuts directly to it, but they'd originally written her flipping the channels, essentially, and trying to find the right room and the right camera that Brad is being surveilled on. And she just gets various empty rooms. I love that, because it's like, how many rooms is this castle really? How many hostages could Frank
hold?
Possibly take? Right. It also shows that, like, they could find Rocky pretty easily.
Yes, if they wanted to.
And now Janet knows how easy it is to be surveilled at any place in the castle. So she's definitely aware of it. She sees Brad. She says, "Oh, Brad. Oh, Brad." She switches the monitor off. "How could you?"
How could you?
And technically, she did it first. Technically, yeah, if she is looking at that like, I can't believe Frank went immediately to Brad after, she's definitely in the wrong. It's definitely not they were on a break scenario.
Yeah, this is no Ross and Rachel.
No. Thinking of the era and putting the lines in 1975, is Janet saying, "How could you," in the sense of like, I didn't know you were into guys?
Or in the sense of, how could you cheat on me? Like, it could be interpreted either way, for sure.
Yeah. She starts crying, and not long after she starts crying, we hear a Janet slowly turn. Okay, another favorite callback of mine is when, if I were shadowcasting Janet right now, I would enter on stage left. I would do all of the dramatic hand gestures across to the tank and then back over to the control panel. And I'll just watch the screen as my TV monitor. But I'll hide. I'll put my face in the control panel, and then I'll start hearing people saying, "Janet, do you want some double stuffed Oreos? Do you want cookies, Janet?" And then I just slowly turn around because, yeah, double stuffed Oreos sound pretty good right now. She goes toward the source of this moaning, and it's Rocky in his tank. She removes his red cloth. He sits up. Again, another favorite callback of mine. "I told you, lady, your car would be ready on Tuesday."
Because he does put his arm on the edge of the tank and, kind of, leans on it real casually.
And he's covered in, what looks like grease.
Yeah.
And
probably
oil.
mud, but definitely looks like grease.
I don't think Rocky was actually crying. I think he was mimicking Janet. Because we haven't seen Rocky convey
Really
a whole lot of
show
emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
There's another cut line from Janet. Lots of cut lines in this sequence.
She says, "Yes, there you see, it's instinctive. This room is your womb. You returned here for one thing, security." And I mean, yeah, that's what he did during Sword of Damocles. He returned exactly to the tank. Eddie emerged from the deep freeze and then returned to the deep freeze for his murder.
Yep.
I wish they wouldn't cut some of this dialogue out, because I think Janet is very aware of everything that's going on, actually.
Yeah.
And that's why we get the rose tint during the bedroom scene, is that's her one, break out of reality, where she's kind of, drunk on the feeling. She's letting herself have a night out. But I think, when we get to Dr. Scott revealing that they're from another planet, I think Janet gets it, 5 sentences before Brad does.
Absolutely.
And
because Brad's still very confused.
He's doing the mathematical equations in his head.
It's like that meme with all the floating numbers. That's literally what Brad is doing in his mind. And Janet's like, I already figured this out.
Yeah, because I think she's paying attention. I think she's watching all of the events from a science student's perspective.
Yeah.
Instead, she doesn't say that. She just says, "Oh, you're hurt. Did they do this to you?" And she bangs the edge of the tank in frustration when Rocky just kind of like somberly nods at her. She says, "Here," and bends over. We get a close-up, ultra close-up on Janet ripping the bottom 2 inches from her slip. And it's so satisfying because she rips a clean line and then like right on the seam. And it's like, but also, what do you think you're going to do with a little piece of fabric like that, Janet?
I know, just the tiniest little strip of fabric.
Literally. She says, "I'll dress your wounds." Because she's caring and nurturing, and Janet probably wants to be a mom, you know? And that might be why she doesn't want to have sex until she's ready to have kids.
Yeah.
Because she knows she wants to...
Be able to care for her children.
Yes. She says, "Poor baby. There. And Rocky places his hand on top of Janet's hand like a caveman, like, ooh. And smiles at her. And he is so handsome because he turns on that Peter Hinwood, he's a model, smile, and his eyes are gorgeous. You know, if she's been looking for respite and a big, strong hand to make her feel held,
There it is. She found
there it is. Oh my gosh, and he's so handsome. A new expression crosses Janet's face as she looks to the right and to the left, considering her options. And she smiles. And that's it.
That's it, folks.
That's our segment. We appreciate you listening. You can find us on our social media at Instagram at Time Warp Radio.
You can find us on Facebook, Time Warp Radio Podcast.
We have a Twitter,
We do have a Twitter.
Time Warp Rad Pod. And all of our videos, resources, and like we've been putting the links to the anal retentive costume links on our blog, which is timewarpradio.blogspot.com. And if you want to send us any emails,
timewarpradiopod@gmail.com.
cool.
Can't wait to hear from you guys. Love you. And don't forget,
On Wednesdays, we watch Rocky.
Bye.
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.